Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. There are other events going on tonight that may have been distracting for other people, so I'm glad to see you. This is part of a continuous summer series we had on talks on Dogen's wisdom. And because of some of the work that I've done over the years, I chose to speak about Dogen's instructions to the Tenzo, the Tenzo Kyokun. So last week, John Wiley offered a touching story about his dad's stable presence in the face of life and death in the context of Dogen's birth and death. And John made two comments that stuck with me. The first, which I'll refer to a couple of times, is face whatever arises. And the second statement he made was, day-to-day life rarely is discussed in the Shobogenzo, the great volume of Dogen's essays. This essay, the Tenzo Kyokun, is quite different from those other essays in Shobogenzo. So my reflections tonight are inspired by that talk, and I want to preface it with a few short notes. The first two are from the essay itself, and the last is from my Tenzo blessing that I offered during Noman Tim's ordination as guiding teacher. So two quotes from the Tenzo Kyokun. Perhaps these can be sat with in meditation. One is, keep your eyes open. And the other is, nothing is hidden. And from my blessing for Noman Tim, between cushion and chopping block, no walls, no floor. As many of you know, I have served as Tenzo for Red Cedar Zen for the past 8 or so years. I kind of lost track of when I began. And as I've noted in an earlier talk, I helped Kondo Chris one year at our Forest Street Zendo as assistant Tenzo. She warned me not to get trapped by this position, but I found myself both liberated and at times exhausted by the responsibility ever since. I have discovered joy and satisfaction that has both been surprising and deeply moving. The sound of chopsticks clicking on oryoki bowls and the settled faces of Sangha members after finishing a bowl of mushroom stew or cucumber salad is inestimable. True Buddha joy, as Dōgen comments, the job of the cook is an all-consuming engagement of the way. If one lacks the way-seeking mind, it will be nothing but a vain struggle and hardships without benefit in the end. This summer's assignment was to offer comments on one of Dogen's essays. These instructions are interesting because they are not part of the essays we associate with Dogen's Shobogenzo, a deep and extensive offering that plumbs the depths and soars beyond the outer edges of the vast universe, exploring various questions in a style that is first a bit baffling and comes into clearer perspective with exposure, diligence, and repetition. This text is different in ways I hope to make clear in the next few minutes. My deeper appreciation of Tenzo Kyokun has benefited from a book I provide to fellow students who express an interest in the position of Tenzo. It's called appropriately, How to Cook Your Life. And I highly recommend it, easily available on Amazon for a few dollars. A commentary by Uchiyama Roshi. I remember taking this book to Mexico just after beginning this role, and how I treasured my study time with Uchiyama's reflections on his own evolution during the hungry times of World War II and the lean times of recovery in Japan. As he points out, and is evident from the two pithy quotes above and many others that will emerge during this talk, serving as Tenzo is both a unique opportunity to serve the three treasures of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. It is also a moment-by-moment opportunity to reflect on your personal life and to incorporate a posture and attitude toward every moment and object one encounters to fully realize the self becoming the self in full engagement with the relative world we live in, breath by breath. Instructions to the cook is text that both is instructive for continuing practice and utterly practical, tracing the day's work of the Tenzo from getting the rice and vegetables from the temple administrators immediately following the noon meal to counting the number of mouths to be fed as the Tenzo returns to his room and closes his eyes at the end of the day. Dogen poses facing whatever arises in this context. All day and night, the Tenzo has to make arrangements and prepare meals without wasting a moment. If he throws all his energy into whatever the situation truly calls for, then both the activity and the method by which he carries it out will naturally work to nurture the seeds of the Buddha Dharma. Just taking care of the function of the Tenzo enables all the residents in the community to carry on their practice in the most stable way. Or again, reflecting on facing whatever arises, Dogen says, put your whole attention into the work, seeing just what the situation calls for, and cultivate a spirit which strives to increase the source of goodness upon the mountain of goodness. It's another way to appreciate Suzuki Roshi's "You are perfect the way you are, but there's always room for improvement." Always surpassing the teachings of the ancestors. In telling stories of various Tenzo ancestors, Dogen makes it clear that the Tenzo is the man or woman fully living out the Buddha Dharma, or a paragraph later, working as the Tenzo is the incomparable practice of the Buddhas. But this practice is not separate from Zazen. Rather, it is the place where the stillness of sitting becomes the acting point of practice, where each seemingly individual action, from recipe choice to counting the mouths to be fed, to shopping, to serving each meal and all its constituent pieces exactly on time, to cleaning chopsticks and each cooking pot as intimately as washing one's face, each and all contribute to a harmonious and tasty outcome. The constant demand to nourish the Sangha and all beings in the six realms is based on the truth that the mouth of a monk is like an oven. Never satisfied, always hungry for whatever fuel or food is offered. How can we save all beings when we ourselves are in need of essential nourishment? Uchiyama Roshi points out in his commentary that there is no other writing which brings together the work of the Tenzo and Shikantaza together. He reflects on how Dogen 3 times in his text states, the 3 treasures, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, are the highest and most worthy of respect of all things. Given the opportunity to prepare meals for the 3 treasures, our attitude should truly be one of joy and gratefulness. My sincerest desire is that you exhaust all the strength and effort of all your lives, past, present, and future, and of every moment of every day into your practice through the work of the Tenzo. This is not to confuse just sitting Shikantaza with the work of the Tenzo. Shikantaza is just sitting. The work of the Tenzo is just the work of the Tenzo. But the fundamental idea is concentrating wholly on one thing and only one thing. This is the cornerstone of every teaching of Dogen. We might say that we have Shikantaza and Tenzo-taza. Each are concentrations fully in the moment. The work of the Tenzo is informed every moment by the unbusyness that has been embodied in the practice of just sitting. How did all this begin? And how did Dogen come to this essential recognition of cooking as beyond, while encompassing a functional activity, which it always is, and the reverberating spiritual practice of concentrating on one thing, instant by instant, as the highest form of fully participating in the Buddha Dharma? How does Dogen come to the statement that the greatest teachers from earliest times have carried out their work with their own hands? That they have said in the clearest manner, the way-seeking mind of a Tenzo is actualized by rolling up your sleeves. No philosophy, no ideas here, just get to work. Chop wood, carry water, peel carrots, wash dishes. While quoting numerous times from the Japanese text Chanyuan Quinji, Rules of Purity for the Zen Monastery, which came out in 1103, Dogen also reflects on our Chinese ancestor Baizhang, a teacher 3 generations following Huineng, who wrote the first comprehensive set of rules for the Zen practice around 800 AD. Here's what Baizhang tells us of the Tenzo's duties, so much more than just cooking. The duty of this, and the Tenzo is one of 6 officials in the temple. The duty of this official is to prepare and serve the rice gruel in the morning and the rice gruel in the afternoon meal every day for the practitioners. In preparation and serving, he must always maintain sanitary standards with utmost care. He must be resourceful in using available quantities of supplies and attentive to the workplace. He must also be thrifty about supplies and never waste them through extravagance. Instructing the novice attendants to keep the rules, he must not allow them to become idle and negligent in serving food to the practitioners or participating in physical labor. The kitchen official must treat farm workers kindly, and at planting time, which requires heavy labor, should give them some reward and equal benefit amongst themselves. At the morning and noon meals, he eats the same food in the kitchen hall as what has been served to the practitioners in the practice hall when the pails of gruel and rice are ready for transport. He must first burn incense and perform prostrations toward the practice hall before they are delivered. So this Dogen text, dated from 1237, is an early writing from the same period as Fukan Zazengi, Genjo Koan, and Bendoa, written following his extended stay in Song, China, and returning to Kenenji, where John and I and others of you have visited on your trips to Japan. It comes nearly 500 years after Baizhang and 150 years after the primary Japanese text of monastery instruction. But Dogen, having experienced profound revelations from his interaction with Chinese Tenzos, who typically served only for 1 year at a time, and his realization that many of the great teachers, such as Guishan and Dongshan, had immeasurably deepened their practice as Tenzo, is deeply disappointed by what he finds upon his return to Japan. There's some lines here that are startling because it's not what you think of how Dogen talks. This essay seeks to answer his profound distress at what he found. Quote, "It has been several hundred years since the Buddha Dharma was introduced into Japan. Yet no one has ever written about the preparation and serving of meals as an expression of Buddha Dharma, nor have any teachers taught concerning these matters. Much less has there been any mention of bowing 9 times prior to offering meals to the Sangha. Such a practice has never entered the minds of people in this country. Here, people think nothing of eating like animals, with no concern for the way they eat. What a pathetic state of affairs. It truly saddens me to see things this way. Why must it be so?" Then later in the essay, Dogen tells us a bit more about how far from the devotion he encountered in Japan was his experience at Kenninji. They had the office of Tenzo, but in name only. There was no one who actually carried out the functions of the office. Since no one clearly saw that the work of the Tenzo itself is the activity of Buddha, it should not be surprising that there was no one capable of functioning with conviction through this office. Since he had never encountered a living example of a Tenzo functioning as a Buddha, he was only wasting his time carelessly breaking the standards of practice. It was truly a pathetic situation. He never even helped to prepare the meals, but entrusted all the work to some absent-minded, insensitive servant, while he merely gave out orders. Never once did he check to see if the work was being done properly. He did not know that taking care of these matters is itself Buddhist practice. Nor, apparently, did the practice of putting on the kesa and bowing 9 times before serving each meal ever occur to him, not even in a dream. Strong words, great disappointment, and profound distress at this total lack of appreciation for this opportunity to walk the way of the ancestors and fully devote one's energy to benefiting to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. This is clearly more than a job of cooking. In my early exploration of this role of Tenzo, I spent a week as an assistant in the kitchen of Daido Lori's Zen Mountain Monastery near Woodstock, New York. Like Dogen, I was distressed to find that the Tenzo was usually in New York City and had left meal planning and preparation to 2 younger students who evidenced little interest in ensuring the Buddha Dharma presence, had no kitchen altar and no blessing, bowings, or offerings from beginning meal preparations, or other recognitions of the profound and joyous task at hand. It was indeed hard work, but something was missing for sure. Two stories in Dogen's text that point to the necessary devotion of the Tenzo to his task and the profound understanding that the responsibility is unique and truly specific to the full dedication of the authentic self serving the three treasures. After his long voyage to China in 1223, which was quite dangerous at that time, while still on board the vessel he arrived on, the Tenzo of Mount Ayuwang came aboard, seeking mushrooms to create a special dish for his Sangha. He had left after lunch at his zendo, walked 14 miles to the port, and intended to return that evening. When Dogen expressed disappointment that they would not have time to talk, the monk replied, "I'm sorry, but that is impossible just now. If I am not there tomorrow to prepare the meal, it will not be made well." When Dogen pressed him that others could equally make the meal, the monk replied, "How can I entrust the work to others?" Dogen, just beginning his exploration of the Chan Way, asked why the old monk insisted on the hard work of Tenzo instead of practicing Zazen or studying koans. The monk burst out laughing and replied, "My good friend from abroad, you do not understand what practice is all about, nor do you know the meaning of the characters, the texts." The monk noted the sun near setting and said, "I'm afraid I can't stay any longer." 14 miles to walk back to prepare the meal for the next day. 28 miles to find a special edition for the Sangha's rice or noodles. Total devotion to practice and to being on time to offer the meal to the Sangha. And then later on, Dogen sees this monk and carries on more conversations about practice and the characters. The second story Dogen tells is from his stay at Mount Tiantang a few years later, where he encounters a bareheaded 68-year-old monk, Lu, drying mushrooms in the brutal, foot-burning hot sun. Dogen asked why he never used assistants, and Lu replied, "Other people are not me." Dogen replied, "I can see your work is the activity of the Buddha Dharma, but why are you working so hard in this scorching sun?" Lu replied, "If I do not do it now, when else can I do it?" Dogen continued walking and states, "I began to sense inwardly the true significance of the role of the Tenzo." Throughout this text, in moments like this, of stating the basic reality for each of us in this individual moment of karmic possibility, to take full responsibility for our response to the moment at hand and to increase the goodness. Who else will do it? If not now, when? A key lesson for me in this text is built upon the notion of not making distinctions among ingredients, to not be carried away by aversion to grass soup or infatuation with cream soup. Or as stated in Seng San's Faith in Mind, the great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. Dogen puts it this way: your attitude toward things should not be contingent upon their quality. A person who makes distinctions in this fashion is not a person working in the way. Just as Indra can plant a blade of grass in the sand and the Buddha can then say, "The sanctuary is established," so Dogen offers, maintain an attitude that tries to build great temples from ordinary greens, that expounds the Buddha Dharma through the most trivial activities. His direction to the cook is to handle even a single leaf of grass as a manifestation of the Buddha, which in turn allows the Buddha to manifest through the leaf. How we treat something, anything, transforms it and ourselves. The lesson that Dogen draws from this transformed way of engaging reality in the kitchen and in our lives is, it is vital that we clarify and harmonize our lives with our work and not lose sight of either the absolute or the practical. A little later in this text, Dogen offers, a dish is not necessarily superior because you have prepared it with choice ingredients, nor is a soup inferior because you have made it with ordinary greens. When handling and selecting greens, do so wholeheartedly, with a pure mind and without trying to evaluate their quality, in the same way in which you would prepare a splendid feast. He concludes, never feel aversion toward plain ingredients. As a teacher of men and of heavenly beings, make the best use of whatever greens you have. This is fundamentally the basis of an unobstructed, non-judgmental approach to whatever life offers in the moment. Make the best of whatever greens you have. And make the tastiest soup you can from those greens and whatever else you can find. The final section of these instructions step back from the physical and practical and reflect upon what Dogen calls the three minds that inform the Tenzo's work: big mind, parental or grandmother mind, and joyous mind. Three intertwined realities fully engaged with our life. As Uchiyama points out, the fundamental lesson of the Buddha's teachings is that freedom from anxiety, living a settled life with a judgment-free perspective, is found when the self settles naturally upon itself, bringing composure and compassion to everything you encounter in your life, whatever greens you are offered. It is through the practice of preparing meals with all its complexities and requirements to provide tasty food at just the right time that we have the opportunity to develop these perspectives. Great mind, Daishin, is an attitude of magnanimity, accepting whatever arises in the moment as the materials and situations we have to work with. Dogen characterizes great mind as a mountain, stable and impartial. A mountain is without prejudice, not taking sides. Dogen says, do not get carried away by the sounds of spring, nor become heavy-hearted upon seeing the colors of fall. View the changes of the seasons as a whole and weigh the relativeness of light and heavy from a broad perspective. It is then that you should right understand and study the characters from Magnanimous. Grass soup and cream soup are equally delicious, equally the same. One taste, the Buddha Dharma, the world itself as it is. Parental mind, Roshin, or as some translated grandmother mind, is the ever-caring attitude of a parent. As we recite in the Metta Sutta, even as a mother at the risk of her life watches over and protects her only child, so with a boundless mind should one cherish all living things. In the context of these instructions, this means cherishing the three treasures. Parental mind is unconditionally giving without thought of profit, gain, or self-benefit. It's the mind that thoughtfully considers a balanced menu, that chooses food that all can eat without discomfort, that makes sure there is coffee in the morning, fruit and chocolates for snacks, and to make sure anyone who is ill gets served their meals to speed their recovery. Joyful mind, Kishin, is one of gratefulness and buoyancy. The great good fortune of being born as a human in this body has given us the opportunity to serve the Sangha, honor the Buddha, and further the Dharma. Master Dogen reflects that the merit of serving as Tenzo will never decay, and that we should each exhaust all the strength and effort of all our lives, past, present, and future, and every moment of every day into your practice as Tenzo, so you form a strong connection with the Buddha Dharma. It is said that you can taste the love of food when it is prepared with joy. May our preparations always fully demonstrate our joy, caring, and magnanimity to further and benefit our Sangha's practice. Dogen concludes the essay and dedicates it for followers of the way in succeeding generations, an offering to us in 2024. He says, whether you are the head of a temple, a senior monk or other officer, or simply an ordinary monk, do not forget the attitude behind living out your life with joy, having the deep concern of a parent, and carrying out all your activities with magnanimity. Thank you for your attention. So I'm not sure what time it is. Do we have time to? So I have a question for us to consider. We can break into groups of 3, 4, 3, groups of 3. So the question for you to consider is, how do you make the best of whatever greens you have with a great parental and joyous mind? So Thank you.